there. And she poured into me and she read me like an encyclopedia. And that kind of was the time when I realized that it's okay to say I'm hurting. You know, I'm in pain. You know, I need help. You know, because you can't do it by yourself. I just became very good at it, you know, but the people who don't have a way to do it are the ones who really do damage to themselves and to their loved ones.
Welcome to Just Men, a life-changing program that resonates hope as well as encouragement. The program that gives you information and inspiration for the glory of God. I'm your host, Jeff Tate, and thank you for joining Just Men. On today's program, we have a special guest. He's no stranger to Just Men. I tell you, we had to work a miracle to get this brother back on the set. But I tell you, he enlightened us, he empowered us, he encouraged us, and we had to have him back again. Please welcome Mike E. Right, Brother Mike.
My pleasure. Much love, Jeff.
Oh,
you know
man,
that.
much love,
Anything for you and Just for Men, man. It's a pleasure.
Oh, awesome, brother. Well, you know, we got to dive deep first, man.
Yeah.
I want to, you know, a lot of people know who you are, and we can kind of talk a bit about that, but I really want to know where your state of mind is, your state of heart. Some things have changed, I mean, over the years since you've been on the program. So let's start there, man, and begin to dive into how the pages of your life have been turning.
Yeah, and first of all, you have a way of getting me to open up and, you know, say some things that, you know, we try to keep buried because of reputation or, you know, one of the main problems with doing what I do, which is, you know, a Christian artist and a public figure for Christianity and the whole nine, is that there's some illusion that we're not supposed to fall, we're not supposed to have any drama, and things aren't supposed to go wrong, you know, because of what we sing about. You know, we always singing about helping people and rapping about helping people. So how can something be wrong with us if you can't help yourself? How are you going to help me? That's how it's viewed. But that's not how it is. Since I've been here last time, there have been some monumental changes. You know, first of all, thank you again. I can't thank you enough. And I will say this, not in the way of promo, just in truth, that I still get comments to this day about the interview that I did with you last time and the stories that I was able to share. And that's from all over the world on my socials and everything. But since I saw you last, I lost my dad. Which was very, very trying to me because he had dementia really bad. And for some reason, we got extremely close, like the last 6 months that he was here. He was like a whole different person. You know, he would open up, he was jovial, he was funny, and I got extremely close to him before he passed. And he told me some things and that normally my mom would share. You know, my mom didn't have any problem telling me what God wanted me to do and what I was supposed to be doing in the whole nine. But Dad was always, you know, this figure. You know, he was Bishop Wright all the time. But he laid back, and because of his dementia, he had long-term memory. His short-term memory was gone, but he was remembering times that he would take me to work with him when I was like 5 and 6 years old. He worked at the post office, and there was this little train across from the post office we used to eat lunch. And the reason why that touched me is because I didn't think that meant anything at the time, you know, because I would look at TV father-son relationships or just some father-son relationships where they go hunting, they go fishing, and you learn how to, you know, fix the car, you learn how to do all of this. My dad woke up every day and put a suit on and went and took care of his congregation, which means I learned a lot of stuff from other sources, put it that way. And to find out that really stayed with him, you know, and that meant something to him, it was almost, I was so regretful that his time was running out, you know. But unlike my mom, when he passed, Jeff, I had the most beautiful feeling of peace and comfort and just bliss, because all I could say is, yeah, Dad, you made it. I don't have to worry about you anymore. I don't have to wait for that phone call anymore. I knew that he had lived his life, you know, to go and be with the Lord, and all of the sacrifices he made. And I just was so very, very peaceful with it, you know. My mom took me down through there for like a year or two. I was just totally dysfunctional. And then Robin passed 4 years later, 5 years later, and I was just through, you know. And believe it when they tell you, you know, what you put in a child when they're young, if they never even think about it, it will come back. It will manifest them. And if I'm telling you, suicide, I contemplated it, you know, but I kept hearing my mother saying, that's a sin. You can't get into heaven if you take your own life. And that was the only thing. It wasn't somebody calling me at the right time. It wasn't me crying out to God at the right time. It was her voice every single time. Because I even was like, well, maybe, I used to tell kids when I would go and perform, it's like to give them a choice. This could all be a myth. You know, heaven, God, living right, the whole nine, you could get put in the ground and that would be it. Or it couldn't be. Are you willing to take the chance? That's the way I used to put it. So I had to ask myself that question. You know, are you willing to take the chance? You know, because of this pain and all of the abuse, the alcohol, and just, you know, being out there, stuff that people wouldn't think that you're capable of doing. And so when my dad passed, though, I didn't have to worry about that at all. God didn't allow me to go into that grief state of mind, that grieving state of mind, that sense of loss and all of that, you know. But on the other hand, though, it caused a rift in the family between my brother and my sister, you know, because my dad had a church and he was a bishop and all of that. And it's funny, Jeff, that people say, well, why aren't you preaching? You know, I used to have older preachers and missionaries and stuff. They used to want the credit. I can remember, man, from like 11, 12, walking around church, and you gonna preach one day, boy. Watch me. God, you gonna preach, and you gonna take this church over and all of that. And I was like, yeah, whatever. But so I used to ask my mother, like when I got to be 15, 16, it's like, if God wants me to do that, why did he give me this gift to play the way I do? You know, because it was a pure gift, and it was ferocious at the times, and it was opening doors, and I was getting like, oh my God, you know, phenomenal, I thought at the time, at playing. And anyway, I was getting noticed. I played with Tremaine when I was like 20, 19, and, you know, I'm touring and all of this. So I would always have that conflict. If I'm supposed to be preaching, you know, if I'm supposed to be a pastor, then why does this bring such joy to people, you know, and why is this part of the gift so strong, you know? And I figured out that I would be able to do both. So when they would say, well, when you gonna start preaching? I'd be like, I've been preaching. I got 2 albums worth of preaching out. Have you heard them? You know? Yeah. And even secular gigs I would do, man, like secular shows. I would always end up being the last one on the bus because it would be 5 or 6 kids that wanted to talk, you know? And they would say, you just talk a lot to get for gab, but I was really pouring into them. Even honestly, if it was from a point of guilty obligation, does that make sense? It's like, yeah, you were just listening to us outcasts do what they were doing, so now I got to get you back on the right path. So I would stay there, man, and just talk to them and talk them through a lot of things, because this is life. I just thank God that he put me in the middle. That's what I call it. BC, I call it before cable and after cable. You know, that I'm still relevant enough to understand what they're going through. My son just graduated from MTSU. He did great. I usually say I'm blessed because my son don't even have a tat. And he doesn't sag or anything. He's a wonderful, wonderful kid. My daughters are all phenomenal, and my grandkids and everything. So I've been blessed on that end. But what I see happening, you know, on a daily basis, people say, why do you always stop and talk to people? And Jeff, I can't figure it out either. But it's like I always know, you know, kind of what to say. Not that I know what to say, but the right thing comes out. So I put myself into that type of evangelist more than, because the other thing that bothered me is that I knew how to preach. You feel me? I knew I could go buy the right suit, you know, get the right tailor, have the right person playing the organ and the right choir, and of course I could put the band together and my church would be booming because I knew how to preach. But I didn't want to do that because that's kind of like taking water to the ocean to me. You know, that. If I'm gonna be an entertainer, then I'm gonna rap and have fun doing it. You know what I mean? Without all of the other responsibilities of it. Because a lot of my friends are like large in churches now. Their churches 5,000, 6,000 members, and we grew up kicking it as shorties. But when they started carrying their dad's briefcases around and wearing suits and stuff, my mom again would pull me aside. That's nothing to play with. If you ain't ready to do that, don't do that. You know, and so that's when I said, well, maybe it's the music that I'm supposed to be doing. But I think I took the right path because of the lives that I didn't know I was reaching, you know, and the passion that I have for this and for people. I just love people, and I love helping people, and I love getting people through things, even at my own sacrifice, you know, at my own demise. If I see someone that's hurting in a Target or in the airport, or so, I gotta know why for some reason, you know. And it's not an ego. It's not the fact that I've, you know, the end all to be all. I say I don't come down from the mountain with the tablets like Moses did. But I do know that I think I've come into what my calling really is, you know. And so back to my brother and sister, when my dad passed, everybody was like, Mike, you gotta come home, you gotta come home, you gotta come home and take the church, you know. If you come home, I'll come back to the church and this and that and the other. But it didn't really sit well with my brother and sister, you know. And we kind of drifted apart. And I tried and I tried and I tried, and it hurt me a lot, you know, because they didn't recognize my calling because I didn't follow the protocol, and I didn't follow the norms, and I didn't have the suit and the clergy and go to the conventions and, you know, do all of that stuff. And so it grieved me. And that's the part, you know, that I guess has taken me down through there, you know, to the point of where I had to let it go, not let them go. I had to stop trying, in other words, you know, and I had to sit back and let him do it. So now we're good now, you know. My nephews are doing great, and my sister-in-law, my brother's wife, she's been a catalyst between us, and so we're healing again. And I'm saying that to say, because everybody knows us, you know what I mean, and they don't know, you know, what you go through personally, because we were taught that nothing is ever wrong. I don't care what happened at breakfast. I don't care what happened in the car. When you got out of that car at church, there was nothing ever wrong. And that led to a lifelong issue with disguising pain and not being honest and becoming a professional at deception almost. Because, how you doing, Mike? I'm good, man. What's up, Doc? And I know that I'm only good. There were times, Jeff, when I was playing at Mount Zion, that I knew the only piece I would have that day was that hour and a half in the pit. You feel me? Yeah. And as soon as church was over and I got back in the car, I'm back to this, instead of getting some kind of assistance then. So, yeah, you know, I've been dealing with that.
Yeah, and I want to park there a little bit because, Mike, you bringing up something a lot of people deal with privately because they have cloaked or put on this clothing that mask the pain, and they do it under Christianity, or they'll do it under what the word calls it, the traditions of men.
Right.
It's the religious activities that they put on. You know, when you ask someone how you're doing, oh, I'm highly favored and I'm blessed, and I'm,
the
you know, too blessed to be stressed, and all the other things. We got the cliches, but deep inside there's a pain, and a lot of it is because of the pressure that people placed on them on expectations. And I like the one thing about you, Mike, and I share some things, man, that's always been on my heart about you, has been your transparency, your ability to tap into the heart of people, man. Yeah. You know, when I say, hey, man, my brother, I'm talking about beyond this brother, but I'm talking about the brother of the heart, one that connects with people, man, and God has given you that. But the word talks about how the anointing comes, the anointing in our life does not come for entertainment. It doesn't come for us to get a big church and have a huge congregation. The anointing of God comes to break the yoke. And there's so many people that are carrying a yoke, man, on their minds, on their hearts through religion. And sometimes it's when we begin to operate in our purpose and operate in the alignment, we begin to perfect the saints.
Yeah.
When it becomes the work of the ministry, when it becomes the edifying the body of Christ. I think we forget about those functions of perfecting each other, those functions of edifying. So we say, no, you only can edify and perfect and do the work of the ministry in this tradition that man has pre-established. So I want you to share a little bit more in terms of how you begin to make that shift from the inside and say, hey, I'm not going to continue to be led by the people and be led by the Spirit of God, and trust God that in my obedience, he'll pay the consequences of that and bring alignment back into relationship. Talk a bit, because people are suffering.
Yeah, one thing that did that for me was getting by the shame of it. You know, when my wife passed, that was just one of the most difficult parts of my life. And I went to therapy, you know, to help with my kids. And she explained to me what shame can do to you. Shame of what you may have done, what you're doing, what you're going through. And one thing that broke that for me, believe it or not, I'll never forget it, is when Robin had cancer, I came off the road and I was working at the front desk at the Embassy Suites. And there was the saints that were having a little prayer retreat that weekend. And I'll never forget, the pastor's wife, I'd never seen her before. And I check in, hey, how you doing? She says, great, how are you? I said, I'm doing great. And she said, no, you're not. She said, come here. And she called me down to the end of the counter. And I was boo-hooing by the time I got down there. And she poured into me and she read me like an encyclopedia. And that kind of was the time when I realized that it's okay to say I'm hurting. You know, I'm in pain. You know, I need help. You know, because you can't do it by yourself. I just became very good at it, you know, but the people who don't have a way to do it are the ones who really do damage to themselves and to their loved ones. I was able to buffer my loved ones from the hell and the pain that I was going through, but it causes more damage to yourself, which makes the recovery harder. So when she gave me that permission to be broken, that permission to know you're on the wrong path, that permission to say you're right, that permission to say, yeah, this is not cool where I am right now, and I've been doing this every day and I can't do it anymore. I just didn't have anybody to release that pressure valve. But once she did that, and I had a problem with thinking people wouldn't like me if I said no. You know, can you do this gig, man? I knew I couldn't, but I tried to figure out a way to do it, because if I said no, they'll never call me again, literally. You know, but I was doing more damage by not showing up, by not being able to do the gig when they needed it, than me simply saying, no, man, I'm not in a place to do that right now. I'm not strong enough to do that right now. I don't need the money, that particular money, you know, because we can pile on excuses as to why we need to do something when we even know it's wrong, you know. And the other thing is, it took me to have the ability to step away from some relationships in my life that were, you know, you knew they weren't cool. You know what I'm saying? But they was your boys or your girl or whoever, you know, and they always patted you on the back and they looked at you like a celebrity and the whole nine. And so you got that self-serving approval from these people, but at a price, at a sacrifice of your dignity, of your own spirituality at times, of your own, you know, you have your life even. So once I was able to do that and wake up the next morning and say, wow, that was okay, I didn't have to do that last night. Or that was okay, he called and no, man, I can't come, I can't do that, you know. And then I run into him and, hey, man, how you doing, you okay? And it didn't affect him. And I was like, wow, okay, so that was truth to me. That was honesty to me. That was purity to me, which was God rewarding me by saying, look, knucklehead, I've been trying to tell you this for years. You just ain't been listening. You know, you just think that you have to represent me the way you think you got to represent me. That ain't what I need you to do. I need you to represent me in you, because you'll never be me. Okay, you can't make the sick well. You know, you can't walk on water, so stop telling people you can, or stop pretending like you can, and let them know that this is what he did for me. I was where you are, or I was past where you are right now, and that once I was okay with accepting my own infidelities and my own shortcomings and my own mess ups and my own disgust and my own shame, I was able to get by it. And if you know, some people, I don't know, I know you have, because I know where you are, but there's a time in your life when you have no doubt that that was God. That feeling you got, that voice you heard, that emotion, or that issue that got worked out, you have no doubt that it was him. So when she prayed for me and did that for me, I had no doubt, because I probably couldn't tell you what she looked like, because she kind of disappeared, you know, and it wasn't because of the tears or whatever. It was, I couldn't say, no, that's not the case. It was too much truth. You know, it was too much purity. It was too right for me to say, oh, no, I'm good. I mean, yeah, I've had a few issues, but no, I had to shut up and I had to listen, because it was God. And it wasn't, I was mesmerized like it was psychic power or whatever. I heard the voice, and it spoke directly to my heart. So have I been perfect since then? No. But I've been able to cope a lot better with adversity, a lot better with pain, a lot better with disappointment, a lot better with my own shortcomings, and being okay with myself for not trying to be the popular guy all the time. You know, the popular guy is always ready to go, always good to be there, always the life of the party. That's the other thing. I realized I don't have to be the life of the party all the time anymore. I don't have to wake up the room anymore. But once I shared with me myself, and got out of myself and said, you're okay, you know, because he said you're okay, it was, I mean, Jeff, I'm telling you, there was times, man, when picking up the Bible had so much guilt attached to it, because, you know, you're going to read something that's going to set you straight, until I would, you know, try to rely on what I already knew and the cliches and everything. And, you know, once you start communing with God, once you start just talking to him on a regular basis and dealing with him and letting him deal with you, it gets easier. It had always been an effort for me, you know. Being saved, being a Christian, walking with God was an effort, because of so many distractions and so much else I wanted to do, until saying no to all of that stuff was an effort. Man, I want to go, man, no. Those desires, you know, it's the desires that had to be removed from me. Let's just put it that way.
Man, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I know you and I, and we've talked about this awakening process, and this is what you're sharing. It really is an awakening when you're able to be able to see yourself the way he sees you, the way the Father sees you. And I know for me, that epiphany or awakening came actually through the enemy. We always give the enemy so much credit. But I take the word enemy to the end in me. When there was an end in me, in other words, when I began to quit seeing myself through this false image of who I was, began to see who I really was, the spirit man, the child of God, it began to change and shift something. The word says Jesus learned obedience through the things he suffered. And so sometimes the suffering comes to purge us from the things that is separate from God, the things that we have attached ourselves. It could be people, it could be places, it could be things. And for me, it was those kind of things that I had held on to and made it my God and made it my deity. God said, Paul says, your God is your belly, your appetite.
Right.
And so sometimes God comes in and remove that appetite so that it be fulfilled with the Spirit of God. And so what I want you to kind of share a little bit with me about this shift in your life, because I know you have a book that's going to be coming out, and it's going to be talking about I was there,
right?
You know, from that standpoint, and in so many ways you were there,
right?
Right. And sometimes when you're there, you can become tainted from being there, right?
Man.
So there has to be, an inner strength, an inner ability in order to stay insane and connected with God when you were there.
Yeah.
And so talk a little bit about what was the premise of this I was there, and then how is it moving in terms of bringing an awakening to people?
Okay, the premise of I Was There came from Rob and I were separated, and then we got back together. And she, though, during that time, because like I said before, people thought I was just out there on the street and da-da-da, but it wasn't. I had hooked up with so many secular artists, and I was making a ton of money. Well, one way she thought to get me back was to call a lot of the artists and say, look, Mike needs to play, Mike needs a gig, can you help Mike? And she said everything she got back was, Mike can handle it, because of that facade. There you go, that's the connection. Mike, if anybody can handle it, Mike can handle it. Mike always been this, and Mike he'll be all right. So she just sat there, she said, wow, I couldn't get a hand from anybody. She said, and the sad thing is that you were there for them, all of them, like from the beginning. So when I was calling the artists about being in it, it's like, look, this is not a tell-all book at all. It's very short stories of me sitting down and writing out and realizing that I was the first guitar player to play with the Winans. I was the first guitar player to play with Vanessa Bell. My brother and I did their demo, and the list goes on. Tremaine, I was in her first band when she went solo, and commission, Fred and I started commission, and it just kept going and going and going and going. And BeBe and CeCe, the Heaven Tour, I was their first musical director thing for the Heaven Tour. So it just kept going. And it's just all of these little examples, little connections of just being a part of the beginning of all of these success stories. So I've been able to glean from all of that. You know what I mean? And take a little bit from that. And it's a beautiful book, and I just read it myself all the time. And it's beautiful stories. So don't worry about the Mike told it. No, it's none of that. So it's gonna be wonderful. You're gonna love it.
Well, I'll tell you, Mike, you always bless me, man, your presence, man. And, one time a brother had asked me, man, where's your audience, man? Where when you have your set, can I call in? And I said, what's amazing about this setting has been the presence of God. It's a secret place.
Yeah, it is.
It's where you remove all the noise, you remove all the distraction, and you just get in a silent place with God.
Yeah.
And then you allow the space for Him to fill up, man.
Yeah.
Fill your cup, man. And so, brother, you have filled my cup, man, through the space.
Jeff, and the blessing of doing this with you is, yes, television, yes, an interview and the whole nine, but you allow us to pour out and not worry about what is your manager going to say, who's going to read this, who's going to see this, and everything. And that's the beauty of being on Just for Men, is that it is a safe place. It's a forgiving place. It's an understanding place. It's a helping place. It's a place where men can really be men, as opposed to trying to be the man.
Wow.
Seriously.
Stay focused.
Seriously.
Love you, bro.
I love you.